Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 4 of Hetty Feather by Jacqueline Wilson, continuing from chapter 8. I trudged all the way back home again. What else could I do? I didn't know when the circus had gone. If they'd packed up and travelled all night after the show, they could now be many miles north, south, east or west. And I was too small and scared to run any further. I was freezing cold in spite of my sack. My nightgown was soaked through and stained all over with mud where I'd stumbled, and Gideon's boots seemed intent on paring every inch of flesh from my feet. I trailed all the way back to the cottage, and as I hobbled homewards, I did think with satisfaction that they'd maybe make a fuss of me now. I must have been missing for hours. I thought of the to-do when father returned with Gideon in his arms. I hoped for just such rejoicing when I limped through the front door. Mother would cast Gideon aside and swoop me up into her arms. Nat would clap his hands. Rosie and Eliza would kiss my pinched cheeks. And Jem. I have a genuine little groan as I thought of dear Jem. How could I have left him without saying a single word of farewell? He would be heartbroken. He might be running crazily round the village this very minute, calling for me, striding through the woods, wading through mud and mire, calling my name until his voice cracked. I could picture him so vividly. But I cannot always picture the banal truth. Jem wasn't out searching for me frantically. Jem was fast asleep in his bed, not having missed me for one moment. None of the family were aware that I had run away to join the circus. They were all still in their beds, snoring. Even baby Eliza was fast asleep in her cot, though it was past her feeding time. I thought I'd changed the world, but no one had noticed. I got into trouble with Mother later because of the state of my nightgown, but she was too distracted with Gideon to concentrate on giving me a paddling. Gideon did not get properly better. He warmed up. He ate and drank. He walked around in his uncomfortable boots. He did his few chores, but he seemed like a ghost child now. He was more nervous and timid than ever. If I jumped out at him and went boo, he would cower away from me and cry, even though he could see it was only me. He could still laugh, just about, though I laboured long and hard at this. I pulled faces, I tickled him, I said silly, rude things. I stood on my hands and waved my legs in the air so he could see my drawers. And yes, Gideon's nose might wrinkle, his mouth twitch into a tiny smile. But he didn't talk anymore. He'd always been a quiet child. Well, any child living with me would seem silent by comparison. But now he didn't talk at all. Mother coaxed him. Father badgered him. The big girls petted him. Nat and Jem tried tricking him, and I certainly plagued him. But he stayed resolutely silent. I could offer him some trinket that I knew he really coveted, perhaps a glass bead as blue as the sky. I'd put it on the table in front of him and say, "Do you like this bead I found, Gideon?" He'd nod. "Would you like it?" He'd nod more eagerly. "Well, all you have to do is say, 'Please may I have the bead, Hetty, and it's yours.'" Gideon's head drooped. "Come on, Gid, it's easy. You can say it. You know you can. You don't even have to say please. Can I have the bead? That's all you have to say." Gideon's head drooped further. I took hold of his jaw and tried to make his lips mouth the words. No sound came out, though tears started to roll down his cheeks. "Are you hurting Gideon, Hetty?" said Mother, bustling into the room. No, Mother, I'm simply encouraging to speak," I said. Mother paused, diverted by my quaint speech. "You're a caution, Hetty. I've never known a child like you. I don't know what's to become of you, or Gideon either." She suddenly sank to her knees and opened her arms wide, hugging both of us to her bosom. I cuddled up close to Mother. She might not have the starry glamour of Madame Adeline. She might be rough with her tongue. She might paddle me hard for my naughtiness. But she was the only mother I'd known, and I still loved her dearly. "Don't send us to the hospital, Mother," I begged. She started, as if I'd read her mind. "I wish I could help you. I wish I could keep you, Hetty," she said, looking straight into my eyes. "I can't bear to let you go. It breaks my heart to think of a little Gideon there, especially not when he's not quite himself." I wriggled guiltily. "You will look after your brother when you're at the hospital, Hetty," Mother said earnestly. "He can't really look after himself. He'll need you to speak up for him. Will you promise you'll do that, dear?" "I promise," I said, though I was shivering so I could hardly speak. "It's not as if all the children will be strangers," said Mother, perhaps trying to convince herself as well as Gideon and me. "Saul will be there, and dear little Martha. They'll look after both of you." I didn't have Mother's faith in my sister and brother. Besides, the only brother I wanted looking out for me was my own dear Jem. I started following him like a little shadow, tucking my arm in his, huddling close to him at the table, sitting on his lap. He was so patient with me, playing endless games of picturing. We were pirates, we were polar bears, we were soldiers, we were water babies. We were explorers in Africa, and the simplest and most favourite game of all, we were Hetty and Jem grown up and living together in our own real house, happily ever after. I was used to dear Jem indulging me, but Gideon was the family favourite. They treated him now like a very special frail baby, dandling him on their knees and ruffling his dark locks. Even father stopped trying to turn him into a little man. He hoisted him onto his huge shoulders and ran around with him, pretending to be one of his own shire horses. Gideon squealed in fear and joy, though he still didn't speak. But suddenly I seemed to be the pet of the family too. Father took me out in the fields with him, held me tight while I rode on the shire's back. The horse was too big to be a comfortable ride, and was a simple Goliath plodder compared to Madame Adeline's elegant, performing pirate horse. But even so, I kicked my heels and held my arms out, pretending I was dressed in pink spangles in the circus ring. Nat had started whittling simple toys from pieces of wood. He fashioned me a horse, and Gideon an elephant. To be truthful, the only way we could distinguish them was by size, but it was kind of my big brother all the same. Rosie and Eliza were surprisingly sweet to me too, letting me play grown-up ladies in their best dresses, even tying their hair up high and fastening it with pins. We were 3 big girls together, and they sprayed me with their precious lavender perfume, told me special big girl secrets. Even little Eliza seemed extra fond of me, and smiled and waved her tiny fists in glee whenever I picked her up. "You're like a real little mother, Hetty," said Mother, sounding truly proud. I basked in all this praise and attention. For a child considered ultra-sharp, my wits weren't working at all. It wasn't till the last night that it actually dawned on me. Rosie and Eliza sang baby songs to Gideon and gave us great kisses all over our cheeks, until even my pale brother turned rosy as an apple. Nat gave us a bear hug. Father sat us both on his big knees and jiggled us up and down, playing "This is the Way the Ladies Ride." Mother made us each a cup of cocoa, brimming with cream, a rare treat. Just 2 cups, one for Gideon and one for me. I looked over at Jem. I knew he loved cream too. "Can't Jem have cocoa too, Mother?" I asked. "No, dear, it's just for you 2 little ones," said Mother. "Now drink it all up like a good girl before I get you both ready for bed." I went to sit beside Jem, who had been very quiet all evening. "Take a sip, Jem," I whispered. Jem shook his head quietly. He kept his head bent, but I saw he had tears in his eyes. My stomach squeezed tight. Why was Jem so sad? I saw Mother boiling up a great pan of water on the stove, hot washing water, though it wasn't bath night. Then at last it dawned on me. She was going to take Gideon and me to the hospital tomorrow. I'd known for years that I had to go back to the Foundling Hospital. For the past few months, folk had referred to it openly and often. I had myself, but it had still seemed distant, long in the future. Not anything to worry about right this minute. But now suddenly it had sprung upon me. This was it, my last night in the cottage. The sweet cocoa soured in my mouth. I crept so near Jem I was practically in his lap. He saw I'd realised and put a finger to his lips, nodding at Gideon. My little brother was smiling as he sipped his cocoa. Mother pulled off his shirt and said, "Skin a rabbit," said and Gideon made a bunny face, twitching his nose. He was almost his old self again, though he still wasn't talking. I knew if I cried out that we were going to the hospital the very next day, Gideon would be frightened into fits. So I closed my mouth, pressing my hands over my lips to make certain I would not talk. Jem hugged me tight. "What a dear brave girl you are, Hetty," he whispered in my ear. I didn't want to be brave. I wanted to scream and make a huge despairing fuss, but I could see that would spoil everything for Gideon, and for me too. So I held my tongue and choked down my cocoa, though I couldn't stop my tears brimming as I gazed around the little room that had been my home for the last 5 years. I could not bear to think I would never see it again. I could not bear to think I would not see Mother, Father, and my brothers and sisters, my family. I especially could not bear to think I would never see my dear Jem again. The tears rolled down my face and I hid my head in my hands. "Look at Hetty. She's tired herself out," said Eliza. "A quick bath in the tub and you'll be tucked up in bed, Hetty dear," said Rosie. I let my sisters undress me and lift me up into the soapy water. Mother washed me all over and rubbed the soap suds into my hair so hard I thought the red might run away with the water. Then I was towelled vigorously, a nightgown thrust over my head, and I was carried upstairs. I kept my eyes closed all the time, even when everyone gave me a good-night kiss. I was tucked up beside Gideon, who was already genuinely asleep. I lay there, waiting. Then Jem crept upstairs. He got into bed beside me, put his arms around me. I buried my head in his chest and wept. "There, Hetty. There, dear Hetty," he murmured. "I don't want to go," I sobbed. "I shall run away. Yes, I shall run away right now." "Where will you run to, Hetty?" "I shall find the circus. I shall live with Madame Adeline," I said. "Perhaps she really is my mother." "How will you find the circus? It could be right up in Scotland or way down to Cornwall." "The circus is gone, Hetty." "I'll still run away," I said. "But what will you eat? Where will you live? Who will you Who will look after you? I'll eat berries and nuts, and I'll sleep curled up in trees and haystacks and barns. I paused, trying to work it out in my head. And if you will run away too, Jem, then you can look after me. Oh, Hetty, I wish I could. I've tried to plot it out. I could maybe get farm work far away where they don't know me, though I'm not really big or strong enough yet. And you can't work for years and years, Hetty. You could do the work for me. Yes, but they wouldn't let you tag along too. They'd say you needed to be cared for. They would seize you and put you in the workhouse, and that would be much worse than the hospital. So don't you see, Hetty, we can't run away, though I wish we could with all my heart. Oh, Jem, please, please, please don't let them take me away. I wept, past reasoning. He held me close and murmured stories in my ear about my time at the hospital. Everyone will like you. How could they not? And you will make good friends there. You'll learn lots at school, and the years will go by a blink. And then, when you are all grown up, I will come and find you, remember? We will truly have our own house, I snuffled. Yes, our own dear house, and we will live there together. And when I'm an old man with a grey beard and you're an old lady, hopefully not with a beard. I giggled in spite of everything. Then we will scarcely remember we were ever separated. I promise we will be together and live happily ever after, just like the fairy tales. He told me this over and over until I went to sleep in a soggy little heap on his chest. And whenever I woke in the night, he whispered it all over again. Then suddenly Mother was shaking me, easing me out of bed. I clung frantically to Jem. There now, Hetty, he said. Let me dress her, Mother. You go and get Gideon ready. Jem did his best to dress me in my best clothes, though I did not make it easy for him, keeping my arms pinned to my sides and curling my feet so they couldn't be stuffed into my boots. Stop being so difficult, Hetty dear, he said wearily. I will dress too and come with you, as far as I can. Try to be a big, brave girl. I didn't feel big and brave. I felt very, very small and very, very scared. But I did not make a fuss as Jem fastened my Sunday frock, tied the ribbons of my starched pinafore, and buttoned my boots. I washed my face and Jem brushed my hair for me, running his hands through the silky, newly washed strands. At least I'll be able to pick you out from a crowd of hundreds, Hetty, he said. No one could ever have as red hair as you. There, you look lovely now. I gave him a fierce hug. Careful, you'll crease your pinafore, said Jem. I hate silly pinafores, I said. Oh, how I longed to be barefoot in my old flower-sprigged cotton dress, ready for the day's larking with my dear brother. I clutched him harder, and he held me fast. Ready, children? Mother called. She had Gideon dressed now, but he was still half asleep, his eyes drooping. We went downstairs, and Mother cut us bread and poured us milk. I was too fearful to eat, and Gideon too tired. I sat on Jem's lap, and Gideon sat on Mother's. It was as if we'd regressed 5 years, and were back to being little babies. It's time to go, said Mother. Gideon wriggled a little, looking puzzled. Come on, my pet, let Mother carry you, she said, hoisting him up in her arms. He held his wooden elephant tight by the trunk. I had my dear old rag baby and my new horse, but I wished Jem had made it for me and not Nat. But Jem had another gift for me, a tiny present in a twist of rag. I opened it up carefully and found a silver sixpence, polished until it shone. I stared at it in awe. I earned it running errands. I'll earn you many more sixpences, Jem whispered earnestly. Then, when you're bigger, I can take you to the circus in style. Oh, Jem, I said. Dear, dear Jem. Keep it safe in your pinafore pocket. You can bend it on anything you like. I held the sixpence tight in my hand. I knew I would never be tempted to spend a penny of it. I would do my level best to hang on to it forever. Father was already out at the farm, and Nat and the girls were still asleep. Even baby Eliza was quiet in her cradle. I could not say goodbye to them, so instead I whispered goodbye to my little stool, and the scrubbed table, and the coloured pictures on the walls. They were mostly scenes from the Bible, baby Jesus in the stable, Joseph in his coloured coat, and Daniel in the lion's den. The picture I liked best hung halfway up the stairs. 2 chubby children in nightgowns with a tall white guardian angel spreading his wings over them protectively. I ran up to the angel picture and said goodbye. As I turned back to Jem and Mother and Gideon, I fancied I heard a beat of big wings, a sudden breeze in the thick air of the cottage, as if the angel had stepped right out of the picture and was arching his wings over me. I tried hard to picture him above us as we trudged down the lane towards the village. We got to the crossroads, and there was Sam waiting with his horse and cart. Gideon clapped his hands, totally misunderstanding. He thought this was a special shopping day. Sam was taking us to town to buy new clothes or new boots, a new kettle or set of china plates, or a washstand, and perhaps a toffee apple or a sugar cane for us children if we were very good. Well, the little lad doesn't seem too downhearted, Sam said, chucking him under the chin. The little missy looks mournful though, bless her. Say goodbye to Jem now, Hetty, said Mother, lifting Gideon up into the cart. No, no, I said, tears spilling. I'll come on the cart with you, said Jem. Hush, Hetty, I'm coming too. You'll miss a morning school, said Mother. What school, when I can be with Hetty an hour longer, said Jem. You can't come, Jem. Sam has business in town, won't be able to take you back in the cart. Then I'll walk back, said Jem. He said it as if 7 miles was a short stroll. He sounded so firm that Mother didn't argue with him further. Jem lifted me into the cart and jumped up after me. Mother settled herself with Gideon on her lap. He reached out to me and touched my wet cheeks, looking anxious now, and then he looked up at Mother. Hush, my pet, she said, as if he'd spoken. Then Sam clicked his teeth at his old brown nag, and she started trotting along the road and up the hill. Jem held me tight. I craned my neck to see the village for as long as possible. As we got higher up the hill, I could just make out our own cottage on the edge of the village, like a little grey face with thatched hair on top. Then it blurred into a grey dot. I was starting to feel sick from twisting backwards, so I wriggled round and faced forward, my head on Jem's shoulder. Chapter 9. Jem and I were both numb with misery and so tired from our broken night that both our heads nodded in spite of ourselves. Every now and then I woke with a start and Jem murmured, There now, Hetty, I'm here. Once I woke first, and when Jem twitched and started awake with a cry, I said quietly, There now, Jem, I'm here, reaching up to put my arms around him. Then we saw smoke in the distance, and houses started to line the road. We were almost at the town. On those rare shopping days in the past, we'd wriggle around excitedly and start to sing. This time, we were silent. I meant to tell you a story all the way to comfort you, but the words wouldn't come, Jem whispered. Never mind, I whispered back. I do love you so, Jem. I love you too, my Hetty. You have your sixpence safe. In my pocket, look. Oh, Jem, I've nothing to give you. Give me a kiss, Hetty. That's all I want. I leaned even closer and carefully blew a big kiss into his ear. There, my kiss is inside you now, I said, imagining it flying around like a little caged bird. Sam drove his cart through the crowded streets of the town towards the big station. It loomed above us, its great steel archway a gaping maw. I'd always loved peeping inside at the huge trains, blowing out steam with a roar like gleaming dragons. But now I shrank back. We clung to the sides of the cart, shivering. Then Mother saw the great clock and gasped. Look at the time! Oh, Lordy, we'll miss the train if we're not hasty. Set us down, Sam. She jumped from the cart, taking Gideon in her arms. He moaned at the noise and hid his head under her shawl. Come, Hetty, Jem, you have to go home. Let me go on the train too, Mother, I beg you. No, son, I haven't got the fare for you. The hospital sent the exact amount, 1 third-class seat and 2 children. I can hide from the ticket man, Mother, said Jem. I can run right through the barrier and... Nonsense! Do you want to get us all into trouble? Now we're late. The train is due to leave any minute. Get down, Hetty. She pulled me from the cart, twisting my arm in her haste, so that I started bawling. Stop that noise, said Mother. We must go to find our carriage. She looked anxiously at Jem. Take care going home, for goodness sake. If you lose your way, find a kindly-looking lady to set you on the right path. Promise me you'll be a sensible lad. Go straight back. I can't take any more worries. But, Mother, I have to come too, said Jem, jumping down from the cart and putting his arms around me. Hetty needs me so. I have to look after her. You can't look after her. You're only a silly little boy. Mother snapped in her distress and frustration. It was as if her words were some dreadful antidote to our magic spell. Jem had always towered like a giant, but now he shriveled into a small boy, scarcely bigger than me, a boy who started sobbing. Say goodbye now, Jem, Mother commanded. Jem reached up to Gideon in her arms and kissed his white cheek. Then he bent and kissed me too, on both my cheeks and then my lips. Goodbye, Hetty. I love you so, he mumbled. I love you too, Jem. I love you. I love you. I love you. You won't forget me, will you, Hetty? Never, ever, 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 ever. I still chanted it as Mother tore our hands apart and bustled Gideon and me past the barrier and the ticket man, urging us towards the train. I craned my neck and saw Jem waving and waving. I soared my own free arm wildly in the air until Mother found the third-class carriages at last and tugged us up into the train as the whistle went. I sat on the seat by the door, my legs sticking out. I fingered the leather strap to open the window. As we started chugging slowly out of the station, I wondered if I dared leap right out. I could jump onto the platform, rejoin Jem, and then we could run away together. Mother slapped my hands away from the strap. Stop that, Hetty. Do you want to fall out to your death? Yes, I declared, deciding I did indeed want to die if I couldn't be with Jem. As the train gathered speed and hastened through the town and out into the countryside, I pictured myself leaping out of the window. My guardian angel would scurry down and snatch me up in his strong arms. We would fly up and up to heaven. I would wear a snowy nightgown and build castles in the clouds and jump from star to star. I definitely want to die, I declared. That's a dreadful thing to say, child, said Mother, shocked. You can't mean it. Yes, I do. I'd like to go to heaven right this minute. If you choose to kill yourself, you'll go straight to the other place, Hetty, Mother reminded me. I thought about Hell. I remember the time a hot coal fell out of the fire and glanced against my leg. It had hurt so badly I screamed and screamed. And then I'd had to stump around with a rag bandage for a week or more. I pictured burning my whole body, cooking, for all eternity. I decided I didn't want to die just yet. I stopped fiddling with the carriage door and slumped in my seat, my chin on my chest. Gideon reached out and clutched my hand. His eyes were wide with fear now. He burrowed hard against Mother. There now, my lambkin. Mother's here, she said automatically. Gideon kept quiet, but he started crying. Tears seeping down his cheeks. I cried too, clutching my rag baby, using her soft legs as a handkerchief. When I got too damp and soggy, Mother pulled me closer, her arms round both of us now. The train started slowing down. I peered out of the window in agitation. Were we there already? Mother saw my expression. It's a long journey, Hetty. Couple of hours until we get to London town. Gideon wailed fearfully, understanding properly now. The train stopped at a little country station, and a large woman in a purple gown squeezed herself into our carriage. She smelled very sweet, and her cheeks were very red. I thought she must have been running hard to catch the train, but Mother sniffed slightly and edged away from her. The purple lady beamed at all three of us. Hello, my dearies. Why the tears and long faces? She peered at Gideon's pale face and dark circled eyes. Oh dear, is he not well, the little lad? He's been poorly, Mother said shortly. She struck out her shoulder, trying to protect Gideon from the purple woman's glance. She looked at me instead. What about this little mite? She asked. Why are you crying so, my dearie? I sniffed, not knowing what to say. I don't want to go to hell, I mumbled, though I wanted to go to the hospital even less. Hetty, Mother hissed. The purple woman shook with laughter. We could hear her stays creaking. She threw back her head, her chins wobbling, and then she reached into her reticule for a lace handkerchief and dabbed at her steaming eyes. Children, she said to Mother. Oh, my Lord, the things they say. She looked at me, pinching my cheek with her fat fingers. Cheer up, little girlie. Have you been a bad girl, plaguing your mother? Is that it? Here, I know what will cheer you up. She ferreted around at the bottom of her bag, came up with a fruit drop as red as a ruby. Ah, what have we here? Pop it in your mouth, quick. Thank you kindly, but Hetty's not allowed, Mother started, but the drop was in my mouth before she could finish her sentence. There, that worked a treat, didn't it? Said the purple woman triumphantly. Shall we find one for your brother now? She discovered an emerald green fruit drop and offered it to Gideon. Mother sighed. Oh, very well. She stopped Gideon's mouth with the sweet. Say thank you, children, said Mother. I thanked the purple woman, and Gideon nodded his head. Think nothing of it, my dears, she said. How old are you, missy? She asked me. I'm 5 going on 6, ma'am, I said. What about you, little boy? Gideon said nothing. Mother didn't seem inclined to answer for him. He's 5 too, I piped up. The purple woman seemed surprised. She peered at Gideon. She peered at me. And then she looked at Mother. They're never twins. They don't look a lot alike. They're not twins, Mother said uncomfortably. Oh my, but they are brother and sister. She pulled one of my red plaits. Then she lowered her voice. Do they perhaps have different fathers? Neither child favours you, my dear. Mother snorted down her nose. I don't care to discuss it, particularly not in front of the children. She couldn't have been plainer if she'd said, mind your own business, but the purple woman would not be put off. No need to be so humpty-tumpty, missus, she said, chuckling. My 2 kiddies have 2 fathers. Neither father was my husband, but we've managed just fine and dandy, and I've a real husband now to support us all. She showed off the gold ring on her fat finger. She was talking in riddles as far as I was concerned, but Mother was outraged. I'm a respectable married woman, she said. These 2 dear lambs happen to be my foster children. Really, my dear? Well, there's a thing. Foster children, eh? That's a fine idea. So, are their real mothers dead then? No, I said. Mother usually told me off when I used that tone, but she patted my shoulder now. They've never known their mothers. These are children from the foundling hospital. She said it with her head held high, as if it was something to be proud of. The purple woman certainly seemed impressed. The foundling hospital, huh? I dare say they pay you royally then. How much do you get for their keep, if you don't mind me asking? Mother clearly did mind, but she murmured, 18 pence a week. For the two of them, per child. My lordy, that's a fortune, especially as these two are the size of sparrows, hardly likely to eat you out of house and home. I look after my children for love, not money, said Mother. Then her voice broke, and now I have to take them back to the Foundling Hospital. My heart is breaking. She started sobbing. Her arms were still stretched round us, so she couldn't hide her face. She wept openly, tears dripping down her dear big face. The purple woman seemed taken aback. Don't upset yourself so, dearie. I'm sure they'll be well cared for. It's not as if you're putting them in the workhouse, now is it? They'll do very well back at the hospital. You can always get yourself another baby or two to keep your income steady. You don't understand, Mother sobbed. I didn't understand. These children seem like mine. We understood, Gideon and I. She was our mother. She'd been Martha's mother too, and Saul's. I threw myself against her chest, winding my arms around her neck. Gideon was fairly suffocating, but did not protest. We three hugged each other hard. All thoughts of Madame Adeline rode right out of my head on that white pony. At that moment I was hugging the only mother I wanted. The purple woman was at last subdued. She stopped talking until a new woman joined our carriage at the next station. Then they set up a conversation together, their voices low, so we could scarcely hear them. It seemed they were talking about us. We clung tightly to Mother the entire journey. At long last the train hissed and puffed into a vast echoing station with steel buttresses arching overhead like a smoky cathedral. Doors opened and slammed, and there was a scurrying and clamour that unnerved all three of us. We stood still while people pushed us and jostled us and complained in harsh, high voices. Let's go back home, Mother, I begged. Mother looked at us. Her hands tightened on our shoulders. She bit her lip. For a moment I thought she was actually going to bundle us back on the train. But then she took a deep breath. We can't go back home, Hetty, she said very sadly. You are my dear children, but you are not allowed to stay with me. You have to go to the Foundling Hospital now. She led us across the station forecourt to a public lavatory. This was such a novelty to us that in spite of our misery we marvelled at the white porcelain and brass chain and the proper paper for wiping ourselves. When we had relieved ourselves, Mother washed the train soot from our hands and faces and then fumbled in her purse. She brought out 2 bone lockets, each hanging on a silk ribbon. These are for you, she said, tying one around my neck. Is Gideon having a necklace too, Mother? I said, surprised. I picked up my locket and peered at it. There was a long number engraved on one side. I read it out with difficulty. I didn't know my numbers yet the way I knew the alphabet. This is your number at the hospital, Hetty. Your foundling number 25629. Gideon is number 25621. So, are there thousands and thousands of children at the hospital, Mother? No. The hospital has been it's been open a very long time. All the first foundlings have grown up and maybe had children and grandchildren of their own. And now they're in their graves. So many children, said Mother. She bent closer to us. And you two, and Saul and Martha are the best foundling children ever. Take no notice if folks spurn you or cast aspersions because your real mothers could not care for you. You hold your heads up high. Let me be proud of you. We stared back at her earnestly, tipping our chins up and stretching our necks. She gave us each a warm kiss on the lips, and then took us by the hand. Come then, my children. We emerged into the loud hissing bustle of the station. Mother led us outside where the hansom cabs were waiting. Please take us to Guildford Street, said Mother, fingering her fat purse to show she could pay the fare. The Foundling Hospital, said the cab driver. He sucked his teeth and shook his head at us. Poor little mites. We clambered inside his cab and peered out in awe and terror at the crowded London streets. Mother might have been a country woman, but she proudly showed us St. Paul's Cathedral as we passed slowly over Waterloo Bridge. We could not believe the traffic everywhere. We were used to seeing one cart at a time in the village lanes. There seemed to be hundreds of cabs and carriages and carts and huge omnibuses crowded with city folk. Men in smart dark suits marched on foot over the bridge. I wondered if they could be some strangely garbed army, but Mother said they were simply businessmen on their way to and from work. There were ladies too, their skirts drawn up in comical bustles at the back, trot-trotting in their tiny shoes. They had to hold up their skirts and tread warily when they crossed the streets, which were covered in horse dung. We were country children and used to horse dung and clearing out the pigsty, but we'd never smelled it so strongly before. The river smelled sour and strange too, with a greasy slick shining in the water. What sort of city was this, where you couldn't stroll along the streets or swim in the river? Once we were over the bridge, the cab travelled through such a muddle of streets some very broad and big, some narrow, twisting alleyways, so that I was hopelessly muddled and confused. My heart thudded whenever I spotted any great grey building, in case it was the hospital. At last, the cab slowed and came to a stop outside great iron gates, enclosing a plain wide building with many arched windows. Mother drew in her breath and clutched our hands tight. She didn't need to tell us we were at the Foundling Hospital. And that is where we will leave part 4 of Hetty Feather by Jacqueline Wilson. I'll be back soon with the next part of this fantastic story and lots more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.